All right. Welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet. Where'd my voice go? Where we attempt to drop the bead, pour white lightning straight onto your brain. Today we have to talk about serious stuff because that's what Thursday is, and I don't wanna.
Well, it's not going to be all serious. I think we're going to have a little
Yeah.
fun here in a little bit.
Well, you said you wanted to talk midterm elections stuff. What did you have in mind?
Well, I think it's just something that we need to at least get a little ahead of uh, because, I mean, we only have till next Thursday, realistically. And by then, it's kind of a little bit too late by the time we post everything up. Uh, I don't know. First of all, if you're in Texas, anywhere you can vote right now. I did yesterday.
Hmm.
And you had complaints and you had a lot of waffling in your own head about where you were going to stand on some things.
Yeah.
And I've got at least the Galveston County version of the ballot right here. Uh, if you want to kind of start from the top and work our way down, I don't care who know if people know how I voted because
Yeah, the main thing I need to do, because I haven't looked to see what ballot initiatives are on, and those are always the ones you need to take some time on because the wording is often so very dumb.
mm-hmm.
Uh, it's so very legalistic, and I think intentionally designed to be confusing quite often. Um, so those are the ones you really have to look at because just the plain language of it might not make it clear. Okay, what what am I actually saying if I vote in favor? What am I actually saying if I vote against? What's it actually mean here?
Which is
Right?
funny because we didn't even have any ballot
Oh,
initiatives in
really?
ours. Not this time
Every
around.
time I've voted here, there've been a couple.
Yeah, I know there were last in 2020 we had some because we had some with the school board. One of it was like a increased funding type thing. Oh, there it is. All
We had one of those a couple of years ago, and it was really annoying because uh teachers groups and the districts themselves, the Frisco School District threw a tantrum because uh we the people, their employers, didn't vote the way they wanted because they voted down a tax increase that was supposed to go to more education funding. Education is the number one municipal and state budget item
right. Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Funding is not the problem. And also
Well,
there,
well, here's a good example locally for us. Our school, Friendswood ISD, our teachers get paid less, and realistically, there's less funding from us. Even though everybody goes, "Oh, y'all are the upper middle class.
Mhm.
Y'all are the rich people. Y'all have a lot of money in your school." Actually, we don't. Especially since somebody a while ago was stupid enough to give up the mall to Webster uh, and let them annex it, a la Russia and Crimea, and and all that sales revenue from the mall is no longer part of
Yeah.
our tax system. So the the teachers here get paid less. The overall funding is less, but yet we're still like fifth in the state in education. And Texas City down the road, their teachers get paid, I think it's about 25% more. Plus, they get a bunch of state funding, a bunch of government funding, and they have a huge population base, which makes up for the less per household
Mhm.
taxation. And you're near kind of the bottom of the barrel when it comes to exit scores and
Yeah.
where they go. So
Well, I've mentioned before, California, DC, New York, especially New York City, Chicago, these are the places that have the highest per pupil spending, the highest uh, teacher pay, and the worst performance. So there is no correlation there. Find the causation. Uh, and
families.
yeah, and 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 really the issue to me with that particular one is it's indicative of what infuriates me about and it's apropos with the election coming up here is the way public servants treat the public. You're our employees. We are your bosses. And yet you act entitled to our money. You act entitled that you should be the ones making the decisions, not us. So whoever you vote for in this midterm election, you darn well better stay in touch and hold their feet to the fire and let them know this isn't show up on election day, cast the vote, and okay, everything's fixed now and go home. It can't be that, or this attitude is only going to get worse.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, no initiatives on our part. The local stuff, I mean, I don't know how much, since we have different local
Mm-hmm.
jurisdictions, it was really tough because once you got to Galveston County, it was a district attorney and the judge, and it was a Republican Democrat. There was no other options or anything along those lines. And it didn't take much research to basically see that they were kind of just party line Republican and Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was kind of no brainers on this end. Galveston County actually tends to be a little bit blue because it's not just like we're this one little blip, and then there's Dickinson, Texas City, Galveston, which are all well. There's a reason why the schools are not doing as well down there because we're just like a lot of the other blue areas where lots of promises and we seem to be spinning our wheels except for in the small little pockets.
Mm-hmm.
But our representative District 14, I don't know what district you're in, had just
I can never
Republican,
remember.
yeah,
I always have
Republican,
to ask the
Democrat,
wife.
uh, and Randy Weber and McCall Williams. I'm assuming that's Michael, but it's spelled McCall. Uh, I did a pros and cons. I actually met Randy Weber when I first moved into this house because he was going door to door knocking because that was the last time he was
Mm.
he was running. And well, is it every 2 years for representative?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 times ago that he was running, and I opened the door because I was in between clients, and he came in and talked to me for 45 minutes, and I thought that was kind of cool. And he's more of a populist style Republican, so former small businessman, understands all of that, and he seems to vote accordingly when I checked his records. So I went that way, especially. I mean, this Michael Williams, I do like that he apparently, theoretically, by his platform, is in favor of term limits. Uh, and also, I like the movement away from victimless crimes for clogging up our judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but a lot of Republicans are going that route too because the libertarian base is helping make that an issue. But other than that, he was super partisan. And he was very careful with his words on social policies to not tell you what he really thinks. So that kind of threw me off. Then the favorite one, governor. We have Greg Abbott, Beto O'Rourke, Libertarian Mark Tippett, and Green Party Delilah Barrios. So I could already write off Green Party. It's
You didn't have did you have a libertarian option?
yeah,
I'm
Mark Tippett.
I'm okay. I'm looking at my sample ballot here and scrolling down, and the contrarian in me is tempted to vote Libertarian Party everywhere that's an option.
Well, this Tippett's guy, he had his own website, which is good. He's definitely he's a businessman, and he's, as the Libertarian Party goes, he's for actually reducing spending, not just spending less than the other party wants to spend.
Yep.
Of course, big advocate of school choice, a lot of those normal libertarian talking points. My problem got with him was, okay, so it's a good thing until you get to the end. It was one of those, it's like, yeah, no.
What was the no?
It's the US Mexico border. He apparently, his business ties are all kind of Texas-Mexico relations
Hmm.
and South American relations. And everything's good because, yes, we need that to be strong and robust, especially if you listen to people like Peter Zian, who talks about how all of these aging populations in Western cultures are going to be their undoing, except for maybe the US, because we're really good friends with Mexico. And so that's a good thing until he gets to the end and he said open borders. It's like, no, business relationships and just free for all immigration are two separate things. And that kind of threw me off a little bit. So I had to think deeply about that one.
Well, look, the most prominent and articulate libertarian of the past 50 years was Milton Friedman. And Milton
Ron
Friedman
Paul.
said, no,
Yeah.
no, Milton Friedman is, Ron Paul may have been the lone outspoken elected libertarian, but intellectually, it was Milton. And that's who many people, both, you know, standard conservatives and libertarians refer back to talking about ideology. And even he said, yes, theoretically, you want open borders and free trade because the market will figure itself out.
Mhm.
That labor is as much an economic mechanism as goods are. So labor should be able to move freely as much as goods should be able to move freely. However, even he said that does not work in a place where you have a welfare system, especially a large welfare system.
Mm-hmm.
Something a lot of people don't know because we're a nation of immigrants. Okay, well, that's oversimplification and not entirely true, but
Yeah, but again, if you want to argue looser immigration laws versus open borders, they're different
that's
things.
different things.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't know of because kind of the iconic ideal of nation of immigrants are the, you know, the early videos of the passenger ships coming into Ellis Island and the huge influx of immigration in the late 1800s, early 1900s. A quarter to a third of those people went back to their home country because they couldn't make a go of it here and there was no welfare system to prop them up.
Mm-hmm.
So they left. That's entirely different than what we have here. We had very few, if any, immigration restrictions because it was, if you can hack it, welcome aboard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't, you're gonna have to go back to your home country, go back to your family back there.
Well, there's two things. First of all, we have a welfare system, so unless you're going to incrementally reduce that
Mm-hmm.
or get rid of it, then we can't be having the other discussion yet. And the other part is this is the flaw of libertarians. I'm for as much freedom as we could possibly have, but the whole everything will just work out
Yeah.
is not true because bad actors exist.
And not when you have we've talked about this because you've brought up game theory and I don't remember who I
That's what I was
first
going with the bad
yeah
actors. Yeah.
I don't remember who I first heard say this, but complexity is a subsidy because the more complex your system, the more difficult it is for ordinary people to game, but the easier it is for more sophisticated and wealthy people to game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The more
So
you can get lost in the details, the more the highly connected and highly what would be the word, conniving, something a better word than that, but scheme oriented people,
yes.
yeah, would
So uh we're talking about immigration. There were a number of stories that came out in like 2015 because immigration was such a big deal in the GOP primary. And one of the big ones to come out were kind of whistleblower type people talking about how Disney hired all of these H-1B visas to come and work, and the existing employees had to train their replacements who were visa holders who were being brought in. That's actually illegal. The visa program specifically says you can't do that. That this is only if you have tried and cannot hire citizen workers. Not only did they not try to hire, they had already hired citizen workers, and they were bringing in visa holders to replace them. It didn't matter though, because no one was gonna do anything up to Disney, so they can game the system all they want.
So there's Mark Tippett's for you, by the way, if you're looking for your third option.
Well, crap.
And it's a pretty basic website, so I summarized it up pretty well. Of course, then you got Beto. You could always vote in Beto. We've given our opinion about him already.
I can't vote for Abbott. I find him to be a political weasel, an opportunistic political weasel, and I can't vote for him.
So
I may leave that one blank.
I've got on mine, we could do worse. No, because realistically,
Yeah.
he's a little bit reactionary. He's a career politician as they go, but he does do things through the proper processes, typically.
He is a rule of law guy because
Mhm.
he came up through the legal system and was the attorney general before he became governor. So yeah.
And the things where he's actually relatively strong on are things we kind of need right now, like securing the border at this time of, what was it, 4 million
Yeah,
people
well,
flooded through over the last year.
my concern is, will he actually do that, or is he just playing politics?
Well, we'll find out. And of course, the things I don't agree on, the abortion stance, obviously, but he went through the right process. I do like his stance on ESG. I just think he's doing it a little bit in the wrong.
Ham-fisted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it went through the legislature. I don't even think he brought it forward.
That's true.
But he signed off on it, and he's been pushing the states' rights battle pretty hard, and he's been one of the bigger figures in that. So I went that way, and then there's a final place why I went that way is because down the road with our state legislature, I did go other parties and stuff. So then if my 1 millionth or 1/20 millionth of a sabotage there to our state legislatures actually comes to fruition in some places, we have a balance of power. Because then we would have Abbott as governor, but maybe a shift in the legislative body. So all things good happen when there's balance. If we look at these last 2 years with under the Biden administration, the big issue isn't just that his lack of coherence or any of that. It's the fact that he could do whatever he wants because he has all the power and the legislature. The only thing that he doesn't have the power is the thing everybody's complaining about, which is the Supreme Court.
Well, it's worse than that because he's not even going through the legislature. He's just doing.
Which is what this is the confusing part. Why isn't he when he has that option available to him?
Well, I think it's what I was ranting about last time when we were talking about COVID is they just came out and talked about going through the Department of Labor to create mandates. They never actually did it because just by talking about it, just by threatening it, like how they did when they kind of threatened social media about getting rid of misinformation, and we have the emails for that about the collusion thanks to Alex Berenson. There was nothing to counter. If they actually enacted a regulation from the Department of Labor, if they actually enacted legislation, well, then you can take them to court. If they're just talking and using pressure to get the large corporations who sympathize with their ideology in the first place to do it for them, well, then it becomes a much more difficult path to counter it, because you're going to have all of these individual lawsuits and people standing up rather than one lawsuit attacking the top, attacking the regulation or the legislation.
Lieutenant governor was a little more difficult. Got everybody knows Dan Patrick in power. Mike Collier, or Collier if it's French. He he's running as a not leftist Democrat. But then looking at his stuff, it's like, well, he's still party line on most everything. So the Democratic Party is so in unison right now. I just don't trust it.
Well, in unison on radical things.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I like and I trust people like Tulsi Gabbard or BJ Penn, who say blankly, look, I lean more in that direction when it comes to policy, but the party's lost its ever-loving mind.
Mm-hmm. And then
And,
there's Shanna
and
Steele, libertarian.
hold on a second. I should unpack that a little bit, because if you're not a political nerd, then you might not know what that means, which, if the party has lost its ever-loving mind, the first job of a politician is to get reelected. That's
Mm-hmm.
just the simple truth. Well, the party you are affiliated with impacts that, because if you're one of the major parties, you're automatically on the ballot, for one. That's a huge hurdle for other people, for independents or smaller parties. So you're automatically on the ballot, but then there's also money, because not only do you fundraise on your own for your own individual campaign war chest, but then the party apparatus does their own fundraising, and the limits for contributions and
And
the
we're
way
going to
that
get to
money is
that because of the
spent,
text messages
yeah,
I've been getting. Yeah.
is different. So if you want money to get reelected, then you'd better not rock the boat too much, because it's going to be a lot harder if you can only rely on your money and you don't get any help, whether it's direct funding from your party organization or the party helping you by, setting up political action committees or influencing existing political action committees to, hey, you should spend some money in this district to help this person.
Which is where the libs could use a lot of work, because this Shanna Steele, uh, when I went to look, all she has is her Facebook page.
Wow.
There's nothing else. Uh, Anything else, if you just, I used Google, Brave, and DuckDuckGo, and anything else, all you get is just stories about the election and mentioning she's on the ballot as the Libertarian Party. And she's apparently still in school. And I don't know what
That's
her
funny.
process. I have nothing but her Facebook page to go by on, which is basically memes slamming both of the other candidates. Uh, and so maybe for a local city council or even maybe state representative, if the options are slim,
Mm-hmm.
some a little dark horse like that we can throw in there and see what happens. But to be the lieutenant governor, that's a tough pill to swallow. You got to give me something. Libertarian Party, you've got to put up a state website for
Mm-hmm.
everybody, at least this much on a screen about everybody that you have running in the state. It's not a state website. That's $150 a year. If and
Yeah. I can't I'm drawing a blank on the name now, but there was a major GOP consultant woman whose name I'm blanking on, who had done, oh, it's the lady that's married to Carville, that bald a-hole from the Clinton
yeah,
administration.
yeah.
So she was so against Trump in the 2016 primary that she left the Republican Party, and she had done a lot of work in GOP politics, and she went to the Libertarian Party specifically to help them, offering to help. Look, I know this is kind of contrary to your underlying ideology, but there are some things that you need to do if you want to be a party that is taken seriously. And 2016 was, with both of those candidates having literally the lowest favorables ever, that was the time where the Libertarian Party could have stepped up to become a legitimate party. And they wouldn't or couldn't. I mean, they had tremendous professional help at the offer, and they did nothing with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, over the last several years, there's been infighting, so that's always part of it. And there's the last two presidential candidates, which were kind of on the same camp,
Ugh, yeah.
and they were duds. Let's face it. Well, apparently the Ron Paul section of the Libertarian Party has risen up and taken back control of it, but it's been a recent thing. So, but there is still some structure, even if there's
Mhm.
infighting, and obviously they support this person, or else she wouldn't have gotten on the ballot for lieutenant governor. You don't just say I want on the ballot and I'm this party. The party has to back you.
Well,
So
there
why don't
is
we have a $200 a year website with at least a picture of the person and 5 lines about what makes this person the person you wanted on the ballot?
there are state, and then there is a National Libertarian Party convention. So it's not well attended. So it's quite conceivable she was the only one. She was the only candidate for that slot.
Well, I'm gonna have to start attending these. Maybe I can be a candidate on a slot,
That's
pocket some of this campaign money like every other politician.
that is a good point. But to your point, how do you find out where the convention is if they don't even have a good state website? It's like, you know,
So either that way, that was a tough one because I mean, Dan Patrick's not the favorite on the list, but again, it's one of those we can do worse.
yeah.
And this Collier guy, I just don't trust it because words are words.
Hmm.
I'm a not woke Democrat, which is exactly what I'm looking for. You'd think that would be the greatest thing, but then I'm looking at what he's actually going. It's like, show me,
Hmm.
show me in more than just a couple
Yeah.
words. Show me in, I want this. I want to, you know, fund the police, but I also want
To
such an
reform the police in these
in
specific
these
ways.
specific ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
something along those lines. Uh, but then he also had where he was more specific, wants to expand the child's tax credit and some of these other talking points that the national Dems should be paying more attention to, because it was during the Clinton era that they said it's the economy's stupid, and they're so disaffected right now that that's why they're losing. It's we're gonna save abortion, we're gonna do this, and everybody's like, but it hurts to fill my gas tank,
Hmm.
and that's why they're falling. They just don't get it though. And this guy at least got that much. I don't agree with the solution, but at least he's addressing the economic issues. So Dems look that way. Now make me trust the fact that he's not woke. Make me trust the fact that he's not going to go lockstep with lockdowns if the blue side wants it. Make me trust that, and
Yeah.
I'll look more closely at these guys.
Yeah. To that point, I was looking for a video clip and then I just gave up because I can't stand to hear politicians debating. It's so grating and annoying. Um, but if you want to go watch the DeSantis Charlie Crist debate for the Florida governor,
Oh, I got a follow up to that. So finish your.
th- there's like this 3 to 5 minute exchange in the middle of the debate that is just bizarre because it is gaslighting happening in real time, where out of nowhere, at least to me, Charlie Crist starts going at DeSantis for closing down in the first place.
Okay, so this is where I was going to go with the follow up, because he tweeted a bunch of stuff too. First
So,
Florida governor to lock down his state.
and then and after this, after I heard this clip, that's when I heard about these tweets and things, and I'm like, are you effing kidding me? And he got smacked down pretty hard by DeSantis in the debate. But all he was going for was the soundbite there, because the people who support him will play the soundbite of him, and then
Mhm.
obviously they'll just ignore DeSantis's rebuttal, which was,
Or the
dude,
fact that it's a completely ridiculous soundbite to begin with.
yes, but DeSantis's rebuttal was basically, dude, you and your organizations and organizations that support you sued me to stay closed down when I decided, okay, we have enough data now, we can open back up and we can do these things. But the other thing that was, to your point about how it wasn't a good soundbite to begin with, he was trying to have it both ways
Mhm.
because he was attacking DeSantis for shutting down in the first place, but then he was trying to basically say, well, I would have shut down too, but I would have listened to the science and I would have listened to the experts. So he was trying to have it both ways, but it's an indication to me that the Democrat Party is realizes what a losing issue COVID and the shutdowns were. And they're trying to flip on it in the exact same way that you can go find clips of Chuck Schumer uh, urging people to not listen to racist Donald Trump, who just enacted a travel ban to and from China, and come down to the Lunar New Year celebrations here uh, in Chinatown. This was, in February. And then they flipped all of a sudden when they realized, oh, hey, we can attack Trump on COVID. So now COVID is the most deadly and important thing ever. And we'll just ignore the fact that literally 1 month ago we were saying, hey, come out to this giant street celebration.
Mhm. It's along the lines of greatest economic recovery ever, when it was a year, mostly close to a year of you can't go to work, you can't go to work, and then all of a sudden you can go to work, and so
Mm-hmm.
everybody that went back to work is economic recovery.
Well,
That's not how this works.
they're doing the same thing with oil, trying to pretend that it's not Biden's policies that are why
It was
gas
the
prices
first
have
thing he
doubled.
signed.
It was the first thing he signed, and there are a lot of defenders going around touting that there's more drilling now or that all these leases are up. Well, that's because federal leases and drilling hit an all-time high under Trump, and for the first 6 to 12 months of the Biden administration, they were
They said you couldn't
enacting.
drill on
Well,
federal
no,
land.
but yes. So he banned further stuff, but there were leases that were authorized under the Trump administration that didn't go into effect until the first, half to full year of the Biden administration. So they're trying to count those numbers and say, no, no, see, we did this stuff. No, you didn't. That all
and
those leases were sold under the Trump administration.
and both sides do this, but
Oh yeah.
we're in this moment, and we're addressing this moment. So, if it flips the other way around in 4 years and we're not complaining about the other side, then you can call us out on it, because
Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
officially on here. The interwebs don't go away. So,
Well, and it won't turn around if, like I said, you don't stay on the butt of whoever you vote for,
mhm.
because as far as I'm concerned, they're all swamp creatures, and no matter how good their intentions, they're going to end up rationalizing and saying, well, yes, but I have to do this thing, which, you know, when I first ran for this office, I denounced, but now it's important that I get reelected. It's important that I compromise on this so that I can get this other thing here.
Well, we've got several things happening quietly, like not quietly. The first part of it was loud, and then
Mhm.
it became quiet. You have the person, in the Democratic Party, who wrote the petition saying that with any further Ukraine aid, we need to put a stipulation of peace talks on it, and the whole squad signed it, and everybody. And of course, that's a direct reaction to their voting base, because AOC was also
It's
getting
having
booed out of her.
protesters
Yeah,
show up. Yeah.
yeah, because she voted for the war machine, basically. And uh and so they did this thing, and I was like, well, first of all, this is conveniently timed right before the elections, and second of all, it was repealed, which nobody's talking about. I only knew about it because for some reason I got an alert from the Boston Herald, which I don't know why I got an alert on my phone from the Boston Herald, and it was it was a left-leaning argument of, yes, it was repealed, but these people need to be held accountable for writing the letter in the first place, i.e. the Democratic Party needs to put them to the cane and put them back in their place. Don't go against your betters like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. But yeah, it was an article written negatively towards them for that, but it mentioned that they had repealed the whole letter anyways, and I'm just like, so this was all for show.
Oh, no doubt. It
Yeah,
was it
this
was
was
for the
all for
soundbite.
show. Yeah, it was
It
for the
was for the
soundbite.
headline, and it was banking on more people would not see the follow up than would.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we talk about politics and divisiveness, and I am, as evidenced by 116 previous episodes, uh, very much for individual freedoms, right? And the less regulation, the better. But when it comes to public service, we should have ultimate accountability, because that's what allows us to keep having our individual freedom in the long run. And realistically, we need to do something about being able to just blatantly lie on the campaign trail. For instance, I get this text from the DNC. The GOP will pass a national abortion ban if they win the Senate in November. But Democrats can win 4 Republican held seats and deliver a majority that can codify Roe v. Wade into national law. Both of those are a lie, because anything to either codify or do a national abortion ban would have to be a constitutional amendment for it to be legal.
It would be in direct, not kind of against, not, well, this is going to have to be adjudicated. It would be in direct conflict with what the Supreme Court decision just was.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be banking on the fact that they would reverse themselves in less than a year.
So neither of those things are possible. So this is a lie. It is a lie to divide the country. It is a lie to pander to votes. And this kind of thing should be illegal.
I think it's, I don't actually think, because, and this is kind of what I was going at with the Charlie Crist gaslighting, is I think the Democrats know they're about to get destroyed. I think at least the people who are more clear-eyed and more pragmatic know that those are losing issues, but they're good fundraising issues.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well,
I
yeah,
think this is
because
all
the
about
bottom of that
graft.
message is for me to give money to Fetterman. Like, I don't even live in Pennsylvania, first of all. Second of all, I'm not too keen on the idea of Dr. Oz, but Fetterman is not fit for office right now, and I wish him well in a speedy recovery, but he cannot hold office right now.
This
should be something where there should be a process to step in. We have a process in the federal government. If he was president, the 25th Amendment would have been invoked by now.
25th Amendment should have been invoked, but
well, but you know, for a major thing like this, if the president has a stroke and he cannot function, that's what that is there for.
That is there because under the Wilson administration, his wife was basically the president, because Wilson and a lot of people don't know this, at the end of his administration, at the end of his life, he had a massive stroke and he was incapacitated, but they kept him secluded and his wife ran the frickin' government. That's why that is a major reason. I shouldn't say why that is a major reason the 25th Amendment exists. And at least in the 2020 election, you could look at Joe Biden and question. Now, there were some who were saying definitively, but he held himself up enough that it was a question as to whether or not he was physically fit for the office.
Like that second debate,
it's not a question with Fetterman.
Yeah, that second debate, Biden was with it. Now, the speculation is there was a nice cocktail of drugs, but at the same time, he was there. And so, if the question is open, we can't invoke something life-changing. But yeah, in the case of Fetterman, he may come to a full recovery or enough recovery where he's with it. but
Mhm.
it ain't now.
He's clearly not right now.
He's
No.
definitely not
And,
on the path to it being close.
and what's so despicable is, and people have mentioned this before. I don't have any sympathy for him because I think Biden is a horrible human being, but what does that say about the Biden family that they're so hungry and greedy for power that they helped prop up their patriarch when he's clearly not well and he should be living out his twilight years somewhere with his family and supported by professional healthcare workers? What does it say about the Democrat Party apparatus? And I include the media because after that debate, and go watch some clips of Fetterman and Oz, and God, I hate Dr. Oz. I don't even like to call him a doctor, but
Well, he cleaned up his act a lot after he was pulled before Congress about selling everything under the sun. And
yeah, that's true. That's true. But Fetterman was so bizarrely incoherent, and yet there were papers, major metropolitan left-leaning papers in Pennsylvania that declared Fetterman the winner of that debate.
mm-hmm.
What does that say about the insanity of the radical left and how they crave power above any amount of rationality or logic, or frankly, even compassion? They claim they are the compassionate ones, and look what they are doing to this human being. I have no sympathy for him because he's an awful person, but you claim to be the compassionate ones. You should be the one saying, hey, dude, come on. No, you need help. You need help. And then, if you make a recovery, we'll help you, we'll support you so you can run again. But right now, dude, your health should be your priority. No, it's the power is the priority.
Now let me hammer on the right. And I got through a client because I don't listen to this guy, but apparently Charlie Kirk's out there saying, wait till the
Oh God,
last
I
day
hate
of
that guy.
yeah, wait till the last day of voting because the early voting machines are rigged.
Can't stand that guy. The
So
the fact that he is a prominent member on the right now, when I'm trying to think, no, you know what? I don't care if it sounds assholey. He's not that intelligent. You listen to him talk, and he is very simplistic. He is a soundbite machine. He is a young troll. He is an outrage machine for clicks. He is not even remotely intellectual, and yet he presents himself as such, and yet he is propped up as such,
mhm.
simply because he is a mechanism for outreach to younger demographics, which capital C conservatives have always had a problem with because younger people inherently aren't capital or lowercase c conservative. That's just not in their mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he's propped up. To your point, I meant to mention, and so I should bring it up now because you were talking about AOC and the squad and their stupid letter. I'm pretty much fed up with and done with Ted Cruz, and it is primarily because of his Ukraine vote. And it's not the vote itself to that initial aid package, and I believe he has voted for the subsequent aid packages as well. It's not just that vote and that I disagree with it. It's the fact that he refuses to go onto any antagonistic platform and defend it. He will only defend it in comfortable places like Fox News, which is
Which
a
is
much
funny
more
because he will go to an antagonistic platform to defend almost everything else Republican because like he was just on the View
mhm.
and went through that mess. But the the View's not going to challenge him on the thing that their party's also
No,
in line with.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're not going to challenge him on the thing that is a weakness for him on the right. That is an opportunistic place to go for both parties because the View gets all of their clips and sound bites for their radical lefties, and he gets to look cool and smack down the View for that, raw red meat of the right.
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of them are going to be challenged on the things where they are weak for their own side.
Well, this
And
is
this,
this is to a point I'd brought up to you, and you wanted to defend the right a little bit, but he's part of the establishment. The establishment is neither right or nor
oh,
left,
oh, he is now for sure. Yeah.
and the View is part of the establishment. He's the right side of the establishment. They're the left hand of the establishment.
Hmm.
And
Um, but this kind of came to a head for me intellectually when I heard, um, it was a week or two ago, probably 2 weeks ago now. Uh, Glenn Beck on his radio show had a guy call in and he talked to him for a while. I believe he was from the Mighty Oaks Foundation, which is a veteran Christian charity, and they they focus on supporting veterans, uh, primarily in the U.S., especially with readjustment to life and dealing with the after effects of their service. But they also do a lot of overseas work. And he was talking to someone who had been in Ukraine for a long time, for like months, I think. And so he talked about uh, the war crimes that he had personally witnessed. And this was someone who had done combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he said he saw stuff in Ukraine that was worse, which says a lot.
mm-hmm.
But what made it so infuriating is because the knee jerk reaction there for people in the general media, as you say, the left and right of the establishment, would see, aha, Russia bad, prop up Ukraine. No, no. Here's what's so infuriating about it is that from his perspective, on both the front and the support lines, both on the front line and behind, he doesn't know where these billions of dollars are going. He's not seeing it. So he gave a specific instance of, so this was an SF guy and he had other similar guys with him. So they were able to help train Ukrainians and things, and they don't do, like combat training. But one of the things they did is they used their donations and their funds to purchase, I can't remember how many he said, but a lot of basic first aid kits, basic combat first aid kits. The Ukrainians didn't have any. The Ukrainians that they were helping didn't have any. So rather than combat help, they were giving these Ukrainians, basic combat first aid training and then giving them the tools to do it. And he said, look, this is something that I believe the number he used would have been like $40,000 could have given a whole bunch of Ukrainians these first aid kits. We had to do it because he never saw any. So, and that's what infuriates me about Cruz is because you're the one who stood up and was willing to filibuster to shut the government down because of inappropriate and out of control government spending. All right, fine. If you're going to vote for this aid package, shouldn't you be the one saying, but it's going to be tied to oversight?
Mm-hmm.
There is zero oversight to this Ukrainian spending because no one cares,
Mm-hmm.
because it's soundbite, because it's propping up the base, because it's pointing out this external enemy that we can blame on stuff so that we can help our reelection.
Well, it's kind of when you bring in things like the Elon Musk situation, he provided Starlink to the Ukraine so they could have free internet, 5G internet, which is how they're actually mounting their defense because that's the only way they can communicate. Was costing them $30 million a week. So at
That's
some
a lot of
point,
money.
yeah, at some point he said, well, part of it is their own doing, but at some point he said, well, I'm going to have to stop doing that. And then he even told the government, he said, you're paying for all their stuff. Why don't you pay for their Starlink? No, got a big fat no. And this is on the heels also of him saying, hey, we probably should go to the negotiating table at some point. Here are some ideas. And the Ukrainian ambassador saying, in these words, fuck you, or fuck off, excuse me, fuck off. And in his tweet following his plans to remove Starlink, he said, I'm just doing as asked. So we know that has a lot to do with
Well,
it.
and it's
It,
not just the money. It's I don't remember who I heard point this out, but Russia is one of the top governmental hackers in the world. China has whole teams of People's Liberation Army groups that are hackers to steal technology, to steal intelligence, and to disrupt everybody else so that China can be number one. North Korea does this a lot too, but Russia is a major player in that game. So by giving Ukraine Starlink, he was exposing himself to direct attack from
which
Russian
was part of the
hackers.
expense. And
Yeah.
he even said himself, it's getting harder and harder and harder to fend it off. But not only that, at some point we have to come to the not realization, but the oh God. President is Jimmy Carter still alive?
He was. Is he not now?
Oh, I don't know because the email, the text I just got is President Carter is calling on Americans to fight back against the GOP's assault
Oh,
on our
jeez.
democracy. If the GOP wins 5 Senate seats in the House and just one in the Senate, they will take over Congress and pave a way for anti-democratic takeover of the country. So if they're voted in, they could make a democratic take over the country. Sorry to sidetrack from our conversation, but that was the text I just got. But
Is Jimmy Carter going to be taken off of social media and have an investigation on him now for questioning the integrity of the election?
no, because he's
Oh, okay.
exposing the people who are going to, you know.
Gotcha.
But when it comes to Starlink and then even our aid packages, you have to take a sober look back. And this is not being pro-Russia. This is, which is the accusation someone's going to make if they ever watch this and they're on the other side of the aisle. Uh, are we prolonging the agony? Are we keeping something alive with someone suffering? You know, one of the hardest decisions in our lives, which is how good we have it, is do we take our dog to get it put out of its misery as it's getting really old and having so many problems?
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
don't want to do it too soon, but at the same time, you have to ask yourself the question, am I holding on too long for my own reasons, not for the sake
It,
of this thing? And
and to be fair,
I
I
am
have a
not comparing Ukraine to a dog. That is just an analogy, people. So
and to be fair, I have a lot of sympathy for the normal Ukrainian people who it has to rub the. I mean, there have been animosities with Russia since the 1930s when Joseph Stalin purposely starved millions of Ukrainians to death, and the US and the New York Times knew all about it and lied about it. But I digress. But in 2014, when they invaded and took over Crimea, you know, so this has been stuck in their craw for a while, and now he's trying to do it again to an even bigger chunk of their country. So I can understand how, you know, the how Ukrainians would be touchy about this and be want to say, no, this is my country and I'm going to fight for it until we take it all back and kick out these Russians who we don't like anyway. But at the same time, at what cost? Can you come up with a peace negotiation that you can live with? You might not like it, but could you live with it, and would it be better than what's happening now?
well, when we talked about the establishment right and left, how much of this is prolonging it so Russia will finally do the thing that they need to do for us to want to say, we're going to come get you?
Well, and this is the infuriating part is I have so much sympathy for the Ukrainian people because not just that I can see how they would look at this with the this is my country and I want to fight to take it back, but I also have a tremendous amount of sympathy for them because their country is basically a giant laundromat.
Mm-hmm.
That when people talk about the corruption there, that's what they mean. Is that the Ukraine has long been used as a place for Western politicians to launder money. That is not an exaggeration. I mean, straight up conspiracy, illegal. These people should be charged under a RICO statute, laundering money.
Well, and that's the other part of it we talked about way in the beginning of all this is at the end of this, say Ukraine finally does fend off Russia.
Mhm.
What's going to be the result of in that country is a bunch of well-armed cartels running the country because that's what we did. We armed the Nazi factions. We armed the probably the drug running factions. We all
Mhm.
of these things that are already at war with each other but have unified to fight off Russia are going to go back to war with each other. Only very well armed because we gave it to them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is we are potentially turning Ukraine into the new Middle East.
I was going to say this is nothing new because eventually one of them's going to win, and if it's the bad one, it's like the ISIS of Eurasia versus
Mhm.
Syria or in the Middle East. Yeah,
Well, on that cheery note, we should move on to fitness and something more fun.
yeah. That's a good place to stop. Let's take a quick little catch your breath break, and then we'll get on to some fun stuff. All right, to wrap up that last part, go out and vote. Do it early if you don't want to stand in line. It will count. Don't worry. In fact, that was the least of the problems in the last one was the
Mhm.
early voting. Uh, didn't
Yeah.
have to stand in line. I think I was like two people deep in line to get a thing to vote on. So,
Go and vote and then follow up on with who you vote for. Keep their feet to the fire.
mhm. Okay, on to fitness. I got a quick annoying thing, and
Oh
then
no.
we're going to talk drop sets. I think you wanted to talk.
Yes.
All right, let me share. This is on Rogue Fitness's Instagram. This is the
Oh no.
winner of their Turkish Get Up Challenge here. Can I make that bigger?
Uh,
Oh, yeah. Just keep going. Oh,
uh,
he's the winner of the Turkish Get Up Challenge. So, about right here, it ceases to be a Turkish Get Up, by the way.
Perhaps you should show a real Turkish get up because that's not it.
Oh.
Mm.
Let's switch legs so I can use my arm to prop on my leg here, by the way, to help push myself up. Let's center it. Let's center it. Which part of the
Mm.
Turkish getup is being off center? But oh, look at that. Oh, so I'd say congratulations, you didn't get hurt. Well, we
A-
say.
a- Actually, do you have a real Turkish get up to
Let
show?
me look one up on YouTube real quick.
Um, before that, what is the purpose of a Turkish get up? Because you were critiquing the form, and the form matters because there's a point to the movement,
Well, there
right?
Turkish Get Up is one of those, it does a lot of things at once
Mm-hmm.
exercises, right? Which are great because if you need to multitask, if you got someone who's got the coordination and the strength and all of these things, then you can work on, well, basically everything from the resistance down, which is shoulder strength and stability, posture, because you don't lean over to center the weight. You stay in good posture and you keep it straight up overhead. Uh, the postural muscles, core muscles, because you have to sit up with the weight under control. Then the hip mobility to shoot the leg through, which he never did. He just switched legs. Uh, the leg strength to stand up with the weight while not losing posture, etc. All of these things. It's a great warm up if you do it light. And again, you know how to do it. It's a great exercise. Two's enough if you do it right. It's one
It
of those.
it's a good example of something we've kind of ranted about, which is this is one of those buzzwords. This is one of those movements that's bundled up into functional training. Okay, when in your real life are you ever going to do that? Okay, but when in your real life are you ever going to need to hold an imbalanced weight, have good posture, have your shoulder strong and stable, move while under a load, be put in an awkward position. Okay, so all of these elements add up to function, which
I'm looking for one that's just the movement, not an instructional video. That's what I'm looking for, because we don't need 3 minutes of someone talking about it.
yeah. Um,
Let's see.
that's extra disappointing because it's like crap, what was that website we used to use a lot and then they got really clickbaity?
T Nation.
T Nation. That was it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I used to go there a lot. I used to use articles from them as a resource a lot of, someone would ask a question, kind of a deeper dive on things. I would say, all right, well, let me go find a link for you and text you because that's that's more than I have time to explain right now, or whatever, or I can't really explain that over text or whatever. So here, let me send you this link. And a lot of times it was a T Nation link, but this was like 6, 7 years ago. And more recently, they've gotten more clickbaity and it's really annoying.
I wonder if I just set my camera up different and just do one. The dogs will let me. Okay. All right, doggos, you're gonna have to leave the room for a second. As soon as I lay down, I'm gonna have dogs all up in my face. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Out.
Mm.
Can you see me if I'm right here?
Oh, hold on. I was looking for. Okay, there we go.
All right, was that visible?
Yep, that was visible.
Okay,
And
cool.
and to your point from earlier, um, you know, relative relative to the movement of your body, the weight isn't moving that much. And that was the critique of the winner from the rogue guy, is that he's shifting, the no, in the same way that when you pull a deadlift or do a squat, the bar shouldn't move that much. The weight should be centered and moving more or less up and down. Well, same with something like a Turkish get up. The weight shouldn't be swinging all over the place.
Yeah, he used momentum a lot, flailed his legs around, flopped himself up. So everything was under control with the weight straight up. Uh, so that was one thing. Second of all, you notice I did it up and then down. It's not a Turkish get up till you go back down. So they should have made him do that. But yeah, that was here's the person who suffers from that. That guy, if he gets hurt, it's his own thing because he was being an idiot. Rogue, what I'm curious about is Rogue did this challenge and that was the winner. Are they responsible for everybody that hurts themselves trying?
Uh, they should, if not legally, feel ethically responsible to some degree.
Especially after posting that as the winner and they do something like that again, people are going to be doing stupid shit like that. Because here's the person who suffered from that. The person who did that the way I did it with a heavy fucking ass weight. Because it was the most weight was the winner. And this person did the heaviest weight they could do with good form and submitted it, and then they see that crap winning. That's the person who suffered. The person who did it right
Yeah.
and should have won.
So here, let me share this real quick. Can I share?
Yeah, you can share.
All right. So I thought Brett Contreras had done one and I couldn't find him doing it, but he shared this on one of his blogs. All right. So what's 32 kilograms? That's
64 plus 6.4, so 70, pretty close to 71 pounds.
so here's a chick who probably weighs 115, 120 doing seven. How much were you doing just now?
I was 35 pounds, so
Yeah.
16 kilos. Yeah,
Yeah. So
half of that.
about twice as much as you're doing. And as Brett Contreras says here, uh with perfect form. So, this
See,
is what
now
it
you're
should
making me
look.
wish I grabbed the 80, but I wanted to make sure I could do one perfectly for you guys. So,
Well, and no, it's important too, because look, if you know anything about movement and you can see that she's obviously exerting
yeah.
herself.
And this is the hard part
She's
coming up right here. That's
exactly
the hard part, getting your leg back.
getting your leg back while keeping that weight stable,
Mhm.
right? It's not swinging around. That arm, is locked in. That's a lot of shoulder stability, which is the frickin' point. And then, as you pointed out, back down. Okay.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
she's done.
and go back to that transfer too,
Which
where the
one? The
leg,
up or
the shoot,
down?
either
Oh.
way, either one. So this was the problem when CrossFit took this cool movement and made it mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Go as heavy as you can, as heavy as you possibly can. All these athletes were doing it. Everybody was doing it. On that transfer, watch the lead knee. Oh, X that out. Watch the lead knee. When that collapses in, it does not on her, but if that collapses
Mm-hmm.
in, that's an ACL tear.
Mm-hmm.
People were tearing their ACL left and right, trying to make that transfer with too heavy of a weight, and the knee going. So, so
Good.
yes, if you could do it properly, there is so much going on with that movement that you saw me out of breath just doing one. Not out of breath, but a little bit out of breath, breathing harder.
You had
Uh,
obviously exerted yourself. Yeah.
the problem also is this is post my workout for the day, and I crushed my legs. I would say I can't feel my legs, but the problem is I can, and they're not doing too well right now. I'm gonna have to have a
Yeah.
second breakfast on top of that, I
Today
think.
is leg day too, and my leg workout's going to be a long walk and some stretching because,
Well, that's what I did
ugh.
yesterday. I've been rucking on my walking days now.
But
So.
that's actually a good that video there, and then what I'm talking about here is actually a good transition to talking about drop sets because before you get into kind of the more technical details, my first thought, working out sometimes in a box gym and seeing other people do crap, um, is don't do it if you can't do it. So that woman there was right on the edge, which is great because if you're going to go maximal effort, if you're going to push yourself to failure, to fatigue, you want to do the most you can do while maintaining form.
Mhm.
And you could see there was a little shake in her muscles, but she didn't lose it. Her body didn't lose position. That's what you're looking
Yeah,
for.
and maintaining form isn't perfect
No.
because nothing's perfect, and if it's perfect, it's not max effort. Uh, but maintaining form within the parameters of the movement, like that person should have beaten the person we first watched
Mm-hmm.
in that challenge. Now they did have a man and male and female, and the lady didn't look much better. It was a little better, but it didn't look
Yeah,
much better.
especially if you're doing it like actual powerlifting, where it's a function of weight class. So it's a ratio of what you lifted to what you weigh.
Well,
Because
and I was
again,
kind of
she's
giving
not a big
commentary. Yeah,
person.
I was
Yeah.
giving commentary on that guy because he switched leg. You saw he switched legs. He didn't do the transfer, which is the hard part, but instead he went to both knees and then switched to the other leg to get rid of one of the harder parts of the movement, which is getting up with that leg. So this leg was down. This leg was down. Being able to stand up from that position without falling, because you picked this leg up off the ground.
Mhm.
He basically flopped his way to a kneeling position and then took some of the hardest parts of the movement out of it in order to succeed. So not only did he switch legs, but he did it in a way so he could use that free hand to help push himself up instead of just using his legs. Well, again, you taking away the hard parts of the movement makes it not the movement.
Mhm. So let me give a personal example of how I adjust to make sure that I can do the movement. So the reason I thought of this is because I'm doing the current program I'm doing. I've been increasing the intensity of what I'm doing, and so it's a modification of Dr. Stepani's one of his 6-week programs. That's
Ooh.
a push-pull leg thing. Uh, and it's the one, I think I've told you about this before, but the first 3 days are large muscle group multi-joint movements, and those are the heavier ones. So it starts at, so the first 3 days start at in the 9 to 12 rep range, and then it's the next week is 6 to 8 reps, and the next week is 2 to 5 reps, and then
You
you
remember what it
reset
was
it.
called? We've got
Six
we've got the Stepani
weeks.
Bible right here.
It was like, it was something kind of clickbaity, like the 6 weeks to shred or shortcut to shred or something like that. And the shred's kind of important here, even though it's kind of a clickbaity word. So, and then the next 3 days are like single joint supplemental type movements, so your push day, your first push day is going to be your bench presses, your second push day is going to be your flies. All right. So in order to up the intensity, which is the shred part, which you'll go into the witchcraft and technical stuff later, but in order to up that intensity, there are drop sets at the end. So you do 3 or 4 working sets, and then you do a fatigue set. And then instead of just a normal drop set, it's a cardio accelerated drop set. So you do 20 seconds of high knees running in place or jump rope or something to spike your heart rate a little bit. And then you do a drop set. You do it again, you do a drop set. All right. So go back to our squat video where my squat form has gone to crap, and I've been slowly working it back up. So I'm able to now, one of the reasons I started this program is because I finally got to where I could do actual squats. And so I was like, all right, so now I can do this thing. But it's still not great. So this is the second mesocycle. And the first cycle, I did my squats over a bench.
Mm-hmm.
This cycle, I did my squats over a bench, and on my primary leg day, I did not do the drop sets because for what I was just talking about is they are very intensive, they are very draining, and if you're it's very easy to get sloppy. And if you already know you have back and leg problems, then by golly, you shouldn't be doing that on squats and deadlifts. So I didn't do them the first cycle. This, I felt good enough to do them, but here's what I did. I did my 3 working sets Monday. I did my 3 working sets free, ass to grass, front squats. But when I got to the fatigue set and the drop sets, I put the bench back under me to make sure that because I want to push myself to fatigue, but I don't want to push myself to falling over and shredding my knee and hurting my back. So,
Which fatigue is an important thing in this because
yes.
people don't get hurt when they're fresh typically. People get hurt when they're too tired to do things right.
But and that's where we have the motto, there are no solutions, only trade-offs, because fatigue is where you get big leaps in progress. So in a way, you can think of like if you're doing 10 reps, you can kind of think of the first 8-ish reps as the warm-up, because it's those last 2 or 3 where you're starting to fail. That's where you get the muscular response. And there's witchcraft reasons for that I don't want to think about because it hurts my head.
Yes and no, depends on the goal.
Yes and no, depends on the goal.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. There are no solutions, only trade-offs.
And this is where we can talk about drop sets. So when we're talking about stimulating the muscle and we're talking about strength and mass, you want to get into a situation where you can stimulate the most muscle fibers possible. And there's two ways you can do that. One, super high intensity, closeness to one rep max, because you're forced to use more muscle fibers to lift the weight or to do the action, right? So you could go through a long, slow ramp up like you would do maxing out, right? So the reason we max out the way we do and don't just, you would say, well, why not just walk up fresh so there's no tiredness? Well, the body doesn't work that way. The
Nope.
body, the body is really good at being efficient. And in fact, using as little as possible to do the action. So you've got to stimulate it in a progressive manner to fire more and more and more and more muscle fibers at once until you get to your goal weight. And you got to do that without hitting fatigue. So there are optimal ways to work up to a max. And power lifters would be the best at it because they max out as their competition, right? So you would do your warm-up set to get blood and heat to the tissue. Then you would do it probably another warm-up set a little bit heavier. And then you start working up your threes, your twos, your one, until you get to your max, because you're telling your body, I need more. I need more. But you can't tell it with your mind. You have to tell it by forcing it to do so.
A good practical example of that that might be useful to people sitting here watching a YouTube video, and I tell people this a lot, and I'm my own worst client, so I have a hard time doing it myself. But but if you are sitting for a long period of time at an office, like once an hour, once every 2 hours, stand up. Get hung up on my cord here. Stand up and flex your butt because it fell asleep because it was sitting there stretched out for so long. All right. Now I'm activating those fibers. I'm getting blood flowing there, and then I can relax it, and then I can do it again. And you do those isometrics a couple of times so that you remind your body, hey, you have glute muscles.
Even in training, just to warm up, it's not asleep. It's not, but it's still trying to be efficient.
Yeah.
We're made for endurance, realistically.
Yeah.
Well, we walk and run down our prey in prehistoric eras. We don't go toe to toe with a caribou. It would kind of hurt us.
No, we run the woolly mammoth off the cliff. We don't, jump on top
not
of it
only
and kill
that,
it
we would
Legolas
run them to
style.
exhaustion.
Yeah. But you actually mentioned this. I don't remember when, but you brought this up a while back of, we've all heard the stories of the mom whose kid was trapped in the car and she lifted the car because she had so much adrenaline. Yeah, and she like tore all her ligaments when she did it. You don't hear that part of the story.
Yeah. There is something to be said about, so I actually came across this working with someone today. It was pushing through the same set I did in my workout. It's heavily an endurance finisher for the legs. One I got from gosh, I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden. I am sorry. He works at Chula Vista, the Olympic Training Center down there, but it's a lot of stuff for the legs, all body weight, all calisthenics. It's squats, then lunges, then lunge jumps, then squat jumps, and
I've seen these kinds of things from you, and they're awful, and you're a bad person.
Yeah. So about the second or third set of that, you feel like you just can't even stand up, but you have to jump, and it was mind over matter. Well, that's actually incorrect. Your body will do more, but your mind shuts it off because it's like, danger zone. Not always, but yeah, it does. It's called neural inhibition. Again, you could lift a car. We can all lift a car, but we would probably pop a bunch of tendons or joints in the process. I was in the moment lifting with a new lifting partner, and something that should have shut off didn't shut off. And so we saw the end result of that. So it's actually body over mind, because your mind is what's telling you to shut off, your nervous system, I should say, when you probably could have done more, but you probably shouldn't do more. But again, it defaults to endurance. It defaults to preserving itself. So when you walk, you only fire enough muscle fibers to perform the action of walking, which is very suboptimal. But you can train it to fire more. So you're recruiting more. Now, the second way to get to what we're actually talking about, so that's one way to recruit more muscle fibers. So that's why it was a yes and no, because yes, we can achieve that by doing this method. The other way, that's a little bit more practical for most people that don't train to 1 rep maxes or things like that, is we can add volume to recruit more muscle fibers using fatigue. So I do something that recruited 50% of my muscle fibers, which would be a lot. That would actually be a high percentage. I do a heavy set of 5, boom, and I recruited 50%. Well, those 50% need recovery time. But I strip 2 plates off and then I start lifting again. They're still in recovery time. So some of those other 50% come in. And then I strip more plates off and I go, and some more of those come in. So you're recruiting more of the muscle fibers that weren't used in the initial set. Uh, that plus another stimulus. So this is specific to drop sets, not just fatigue sets. Fatigue sets, you just keep going until you run out of juice. But
you're tricking your mind
well,
because
and
you pick up those you've just done. So like yesterday, it was my push day. So I was doing, what was I doing? I was doing 55-pound dumbbells on my bench press. I did 3 sets of that, 9 to 12, and then I did a fatigue set, and then I did some jump rope, and I'm tired. And so then I pick up 45s and I go, oh yeah, macho man for 3 or 4 reps, and then it's, ah, crap, I'm still tired.
and now we get into muscle recruitment. Why was it? Oh yeah, macho man, because of a potential. Sorry, there's so many p words. I almost said proprioception. That is completely wrong. That would have been a stupid thing to say, and I'm glad I caught it. And I still outed myself on air.
Just
But
checking the specs on the inline.
potentiation. So those 5 I did super heavy. When I picked up that 2 plates less, so 90 pounds less, those first 3 or 4 reps, my body said it fired the same way it did for those 5 heavy, but it was lighter. So you almost like feel like you're going to throw the weight those first 2 or 3, and then fatigue sets in and you start dying on 4 and 5, and then you strip 2 more plates off and you start going again, and you're still lifting like you were doing your heavy 5
Yeah.
until fatigue hits it.
So
and so you can actually extend the fatigue out
right
by the drop, because your body's potentiated neurologically to lift the heavy weight. So we use potentiation for all kinds of things, but in a drop set, that's specific to what it does. And so you're recruiting a shit ton more muscle fibers until you hit fatigue again, and then you drop it again so you could do it again, but there's no fatigue because you're lighter until it happens. So it's great till it sucks. And you can keep doing that till you run out of plates to pull off the bar, really.
And there are different ways to manipulate, and you've talked about this. So when you talked about the energy cycles and the way you kind of manipulate the body so it doesn't plateau, because that's what it wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of one of those kinds of things, is you're manipulating your body because it wants to plateau, and you're saying, I want to push just a little bit harder. In my mind, it's kind of similar to the Tabata, and people have probably heard that term but don't know what it actually is. But it's, I'm going to go all out on an exercise bike for 20 seconds. And now I'm going to barely pedal for 10 seconds. I've just tricked my body into, okay, we're done. But back to 20 seconds of max effort.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a similar kind of thing here. And you kind of brought this up earlier when you were talking about your leg finisher, is, and I kind of got this from you from one of the early programs you did for me, which is that on my supplemental leg day, on my leg finisher kind of thing, is, one of the things you like to do, because you're an evil monster, is you'll do like lunge variations, 8 reps per leg.
Yeah. We'll get to that, because I was going to go to something else too.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's different ways to do drop sets, is where we're kind of going there. But the intention of the drop set is you can you can push past your initial set fatigue, but still recruit the amount of muscle fibers that you were recruiting in that initial set. So, because the rebuttal to what we just said before is, well, why don't I just take the second weight and do 10 reps instead of 5 and then drop and then 5? Because wouldn't I get the same recruitment? The answer is no, because the nervous system isn't primed to pick up the heavy
Th-
weight.
Now there
All the motor units aren't in sync, and then you sync them up and you made your body inefficient. So then you hit that lighter weight, it inefficiently lifts the weight. It does too much until it gets tired, and then you drop it again and it does too much again until it gets tired. So you prolong the agony by tricking your body into to being stronger than it needs to be in the moment. If you pick up the 10 rep max and you do 10 reps, it's only as strong as it needs to be for 10 reps. Now that still will recruit a lot of muscle fibers, but in a different way. So
Mhm.
it's drop
Especially if
sets.
it's your third or fourth set, because
Yeah.
your body has gotten used to that. Now, am I right in remembering that there is a time function here? There's a reason why a drop set is generally only as long as it takes to strip the weight.
Well, you can do different kinds of drop sets.
Okay.
That yeah, that would be a cardio accelerated drop set was what they call it, because you keep your heart rate up and everything's going. You could do I do heavy drops where you actually take your rest in between
Okay.
and you do it. So here's the usefulness. So again, people would say, well, why don't you just do more warm-up sets? Or why don't you do more reps working up? Because we talked about that fatigue factor. There's a proper way to max out. So I can hit my proper 5 rep max and then go use this technique to add volume to my sets without ruining my 5 rep max. Because if I add that volume leading up to it, well, now I've disrupted that happy balance of warming up without wearing out, because there was too many. If you say we extended our set by, you know, 20 reps with the drop sets, 5 for 4 drop sets. So we extended it by 20 reps. Well, those 20 reps leading up to my 5 rep max, that's a lot of energy, especially say I hit 405 on the max, and then it's 365, 315, 275, 225 on the drops. Well, 5 reps at 225, 5 reps at 275, 5 reps at 315, and 5 reps at 365 is a lot of freaking energy.
Yeah, and back to something you've mentioned several times, which is a good way to track work, is sets times reps times weight.
Total volume load. Yeah.
So and Eric Cressy had a good article on this a few years back about and he's such a nerdy dork that he actually crunched the numbers and showed you, because it was about a similar idea, which was supersets. And so here's why, is because it was about programming density, is because if you did this exercise sets and reps and then this exercise sets and reps, this is how long it would take you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you superset them, here's how long it would take you.
Yeah. And actually, Nick Tumolino was where he got that from. So,
Okay.
so look up his stuff. Now, the way he did it was a big weight room environment. So it kind of only works when you have to work total body every time you do it in his way, because he would do like deadlifts and then a 1 minute break and then bench press and then a 1 minute break and then back to deadlifts, instead of deadlifts and then a 3 minute break and then deadlifts. So it's a little bit different concept there, but we can get that volume in. So you're talking density, program density. We can get the volume in without ruining the max set. And so you get the benefit from those extra reps, but you still get the neurological benefit of picking up 5 heavy ass, you know, weighted reps. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Obviously, there's a little trade-off, because some of that volume is going to do excess muscle damage where you have to wait longer before you lift again and all of those things. But yeah, it's hard to add volume to a strength program because you don't want to ruin your best set, because that's your nervous system set. 5 reps at your heaviest weight does not have a big lactate response, right? Because you wear out neurologically before the glycolysis builds up enough lactate in the system for the muscle to burn. You're not chasing the burn with a 3 to 5 rep max, right?
Hmm.
But you still can't lift another rep. But on those drop sets, you start to burn because it's like 1, 2, 3 good reps, and then it's starting to burn, and then you pull another weight off, and 1, 2, 3 good reps, and that lactate's building up. Your nervous system is still primed. So again, you're getting a little bit of best of both worlds. It's an advanced technique, but you get a little bit extra benefit from
Well, that's why it's part of Dr. Stepani's 6 weeks to shred,
it.
because you're pushing those energy systems a little bit farther and a little bit
Mm-hmm.
farther. Uh,
Well, and,
it,
and there's a lot of things to it because shred means you can see the striation of the muscle, right? Which means you're very low body fat. The muscles are very well developed. All of these things. Well, now because of those extra reps and because I'm hitting glycolysis a little harder in those drops, I'm using more glycogen in my muscles, which have to be restored from our fat stores. So there's all kinds of things going into that. Whereas your 5 rep max, well, powerlifters have big bellies because they're good at packing on all kinds of weight, not just
mhm.
the good stuff. Whereas this, adding that volume, getting that lactate effect, stimulates the muscle to grow hormonally, but also uses up stored energy, which you don't get as much of with just those low rep max out sets. So that's standard drop set training. And you can do that like we've been using as our example with the just pull a plate off, go, pull a plate off, go, or pull a weight off, go, however you want to do it. Or you can do what's called, this is more similar to what you were talking about. It's called a functional drop set. And so what you do is you start with the hardest version of that. So the easiest example would be a squat motion. I'm going to start with front rack lunges, reverse lunges. So that's the squat motion, front rack, reverse lunges. And I'm going to do, say I got my 5 rep max and I'm doing my 5 rep max, 5 on each side. Well, I can't do any more than 5, but I rack it on my back, which is a little easier, and do as many as I can on each side. Say that comes out to another 5 on each side because I made the exercise easier. Front rack is harder than back rack. So then I re-rack it to front, but I do front squats. So it's, again, I never touch the weight. I just make the exercise easier to keep going. So I do the hardest version till I can't. Then I make it a little easier till I can't. And then I make a little easier with front squats till I can't. And then rack it on my back squats until I can't. And so that's a functional drop set where you're doing the same type of motion, quad dominant squat motion, but it was front rack single leg, front rack or back rack single leg, front rack double leg, back rack double leg. And you
uh,
just keep making it easier till you either run out of exercises or you can't go no mo.
Socking back to where we started, the front to back rack is also a good example of protecting yourself while you push that work, because
Well, it's the whole point of making it easier. Not only
exact
can you do more reps, but you can do it more safely.
the high
Yeah.
bar versus the front is a lot less core intensive. So one of the dangers of, I was doing front squats Monday, is so my primary leg day is front squats, RDLs, barbell hip thrust. All right. Well, one of the dangers of front squats is it's so core intensive that you start to as you fatigue. Well, you can imagine what that's doing to your back if that spine is carrying that load. Okay. So switching that, or in my case, putting the bench under me to give me that little bit of training wheel, to give me that little bit of cushion so I'm not going down as far, that's protecting that posture, which, as you've talked about with those, especially the boot camp types that want to kill you. And all right, well, if you kill yourself and you can't work the next time, what's the use?
Well, I'm on an upper lower split now, so I've got 3 to 4 days between to recover. So it is about wobbling out of there on the leg day and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
not being able to brush your hair on the the arm
Or
days. But
or in my case, I'm trying to work back up to my squat. So it's annoying that I can't do what I wanted to do today, but I did it the first 3 weeks, the first cycle, and I was able to progress to more complicated, to more difficult, to more strenuous this week, and I will do something today. It won't be what I wanted to do, but I wish I could remember where I first heard this. Form over ego. That I don't remember who I heard say that, is that was his advice to young lifters, is form over ego.
I would say learn the form and stay as strict as possible. But again, my company is called Real Fitness
Mhm.
because we live in real life. And I would say honesty over ego.
Mm,
Can I lift the weight? Can I do this properly? And properly has a little wiggle room,
yes.
you know.
Cressy talks about that when he talks about deadlift, and he's mentioned that before, especially when he shows pictures and videos of him doing a max. There will be
Like that
some,
dude can deadlift.
yes, especially for a guy who doesn't look that big.
He's about my size. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's probably what is he about 6'1"?
I didn't even think he was that tall.
So yeah, he's right
Uh,
around 6 foot. So
but
he's at 190 pounds. So I think we're pretty much exactly the
if
same
if you
size.
go to his website and you give him your email to sign up for his newsletter, one of the things he sends you is his basic deadlift 101, you know. And he does a lot of articles and stuff on deadlift, and if you go and you look up, he's written several times about, look, yeah, there's a little bit of backgrounding there. So what? It it wasn't rounded enough to be a danger,
Mm-hmm.
and it was inevitable with the amount of weight he was lifting, which
Mm-hmm.
was a lot,
Yeah,
right?
and also we're talking more advanced techniques right now. So,
Mhm.
disclaimer here: when you're learning, always shoot for perfection. Always, because if you can't do
That's
it
a good point.
perfect with no load, then that it's not going to be a little bit off with a big load.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If I can do it perfect on my warm up sets, that's fine. But when I get to my working sets, there's a little variation because the field is a lot harder than the drill. That's why I always tell my athletes when we're doing drills, I'm like, if you can't do this drill perfectly, when you get on the field, it's not even going to be close. So do it perfectly in here to get it 90% there. And also you got to develop the skill of feeling when something's off or feeling when something is dangerously off. They do feel differently, but you have to learn it.
That I feel like that's a good place to end it, because
Yeah.
that's some good advice for, when we talk about progressions, is, that's kind of why I wanted to kind of start at the end of, if you can't do it properly and safely, don't do it. So here's kind of an advanced technique. Here's something I see people doing, but it's something you need to work up to. All right. I,
Mm.
I have not done this particular program in a couple of years, because I had a setback. I wasn't able to do it properly.
Well, and
So
and things like
work
this
up to
again.
it.
This is an advanced technique with drop sets, and uh, uh, if you can't do a proper heavy set, you're not ready for drop sets. So you got to work up to that first. And if you can't do a proper exercise in general, you're not ready to go heavy. So there's a
Mm,
progression to getting to these places. And I wouldn't do a drop set or drop set training with someone who I wouldn't classify as an intermediate lifter, which is, sometimes a couple years of training age.
yeah.
So at least several phases through where you go through phase one, phase two, then you work on a little strength, and then you revisit phase one, phase two, and then you work a little strength. And then I'm confident with their strength training to where they're not going to do something like you said and lose it so bad that they hurt themselves. Okay, now we'll do drop set because we're adding a variable that can be dangerous, which is fatigue. Someone might have mastered 5 reps, but then at the end of it, they need to go lay down. I have some of those clients. They can hit a good 5 rep max, and then they got to sit down for a little while. And
That's kind of how I feel after my drop sets. So that's why I have to monitor what I'm doing. So that I think is a good tease for what we should do next, because we've done a kind of strength training 101 video where you've showed some sample programs of here's a good place to begin. So here's a good kind of first major marker of, I think next time let's talk about what you mean when you say intermediate lifter. And let's do that next time.
Okay,
Show
yeah,
some
we'll go through
sample
the
programs, talk
phases.
about
Yeah,
that.
and just like we did with vaccine trials, there's a typical timeline to these things. And if you think you're faster than the timeline, you probably aren't. You know, so it's and there, well, the reason is because it's not only learning the technique, it's not only mastering these things. There are physiological changes that determine whether you're a beginner or an intermediate or a master lifter, right? So if your tendons haven't been trained in a certain way for so long on average, you're not going to be ready for that next step without popping your titty. I can say that because I've been there. I am one of them.
That is not hypothetical.
That is not hypothetical. So no, so yeah, there are physiological things that you don't see, but you have to know that they happen over a certain amount of time. If you're osteopenic and you're a beginning lifter, I'm not going to have you doing depth jumps off a box. Right. So that's something you would probably do with an intermediate lifter. But even if you jump with perfect form, I'm not going to trust that there's been enough time for you to develop the bone density that you're not going to break a hip on me. So,
All
yeah,
right. Well,
good
we'll
place
get
to end.
we'll get deeper into that next time. Huh, giggity. That's what
All
she
right.
said.
I
And
might
then
play
we'll
with timestamps to see if I can. There's a way you can do it on YouTube where you can skip right to this section. So I'm learning more as we go. But disclaimers, we did not give you any specific training advice or medical advice. This is just how these things work.
general knowledge.
If you feel like you're ready for it, consult your doctor, consult your trainer. And if you don't have any of that, you're on your own. You didn't sign a waiver for me, so I didn't tell you to do it.
All
And
right.
then get out and go vote.
And we'll see y'all Saturday for more Sunday school, probably.
So more Sunday school. We'll have to go over the times because Ben's got his detention for his little scuffle the other day. So I'll figure all that out. If it was only that, it was lame.
Yeah.
Lame, and he deserves it.
All right. We'll see y'all
Later.
next time.